Hello and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. Our weekly webinars are aimed to provide advice and share knowledge amongst business owners on key topics and business areas. This part of our service for Smart Room members. If you're not already a member or a client of BizSmart and would like to access our archive of webinars, then please visit our website biz-smart.co.uk and go to the Smart Room page. Our host joining me today is BizSmart Select member Paul Rhodes from GGA. But before we start the webinar, can I ask you all to use the question mark function on your screen to post any questions you may have for Paul, and he will do his best to answer them all at the end of the session. Thank you, Paul. Over to you.
Thank you. Hello everyone. My name is Paul Rhodes from a company called Green Gorilla Apps, and today we're going to cover off mobile web and mobile apps. So basically I've called it Versus, but I'm not sure that Versus is the right thing. So we'll delve straight into it anyway, and hopefully we'll give everyone a bit of knowledge around the two types of mobile delivery that we're going to discuss. So by the end of this session, hopefully in about 10-20 minutes time, we're going to cover off what actually is mobile web and like the characteristics of it and some of the key strengths and weaknesses of it, and then also what are mobile apps. Some of the platforms you can run on, some of the features you can take advantage of that are mobile app only, and then look at the differences and ultimately hopefully answer a question, which is, okay, so of the two, which should you use? When we actually go onto mobile web, you suddenly realise that actually it's probably applicable to everybody. So yeah, let's jump straight into mobile web. So effectively, think of a mobile web as like a responsive website. So, but the difference is that it's something that's accessed via a browser on, I say any internet connected device. I mean, it ranges from smart TVs, games consoles, to smartphones to tablets. So, you know, there's a complete range of devices there that are no longer, you know, desktops, monitors, those sorts of things. And we were discussing earlier, just before we came on the call, that about, you know, an internet connected device in some parts of the world, they've, you know, mobile has like jumped a generation. So they didn't go through necessarily the adoption that we had in the UK, where, you know, we had like a desktop phase and getting, you know, even dial up into homes and accessing the internet that way. Now in the developing world, definitely they're going straight to mobile. So there's probably way more mobiles, especially if you think it's Nigeria, where you can pay on the bus with your mobile phone and stuff, whereas they didn't necessarily have mass adoption of desktops. So yeah, it's anything that can be accessed via a browser basically, and obviously with that, and when we talk, I'll jump around a lot in this presentation, excuse me, that's just how my brain works. So when we talk about access, I'm talking about things like 3G, mobile dongles, Wi-Fi, 4G, and, you know, if you can get it, GPRS. So yeah, so it's, with that is it's entirely online only. So there used to be a thing called Google Gears where you could have an offline data store and stuff, but the predominant thing about mobile web is you need a browser and you need to have an internet access to get onto that, whatever's being delivered. As a result, because it's a browser and an internet connection, it's got the largest possible reach over apps. So as a typical comparison, if you want to reach the maximum audience you can on an app store, you probably need to cover all app stores. With the mobile web, you only need one solution and it will reach everybody. So a big thing that comes into play when deciding whether it is an app or not is, okay, do you need any of the app features? Generally, you might want to have it for app store presence and some of the benefits there, but if you can deliver your solution to your end users via mobile web, there may be no need for an app. And a lot of conversations we have revolve around, well, actually, do you need an app? Rather than like, here's the reasons you do. We try and convince people they don't. Sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? And then the other thing, because it's a single point of delivery, you're only building one solution and you're just optimizing it. So you're trying to optimize it, different screen sizes, different solutions. Loads of technology exists that didn't exist 5-10 years ago to make that really easy for developers. And so as a result of that, you've got a single point of failure, a single place where errors can happen, but also a single point of interaction with your customers. So you want to make that as fast as possible. So there's lots of design things that have come out from app development, things like burger menus. You know, you shouldn't be presenting everything that's necessarily on your desktop site to your mobile users. You know, think about the time limited when they're accessing on the mobile generally. I know there's huge stats about social media which work really well as apps, but actually the mobile web, if you look at like BBC as a good example, they're really strict down, kind of giving you the top 2-3 stories in a section. You go to the desktop, it's completely built the entire site, and they'll be covering a lot more sections. So you design for your mobile user, and you consider what they're doing and what access they want, what information they want to access. Because it's single build cost, single point of investment really, other than optimizing updates. And then this is where the versus thing fell down. I spoke to Caroline and we came up with what can we talk about, where we got a bit of knowledge. And then I realised I said the word versus. It's not really versus. It's probably like and or. So yeah, I mean, if you look at it in the context of your main website, you now really have to have a responsive site if you want to get ranked by Google. I'm not an SEO expert or anything, but I do know that if you don't have a responsive website, then you won't get ranked as highly as those that do. So it's really become an essential part for search engine optimization. But I think you always got to go back to the user. Forget the search engine for a second. You've got to make it so there's no zooming, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, any developer, if you haven't got a responsive solution for whatever reason and you need an update, any developer will be able to use the latest technologies. It's a really simple process. But I live in the world of product development and prototyping. So where mobile web in my head comes in really easy is if you want to put your idea into the hand of many users, you can create almost like a prototype on the mobile web that feels very appy, and so it has that kind of iconic displays and all this sort of stuff, and it can be delivered so that the only difference is it's obviously served by a browser compared to an app for certain prototypes that you might want to do, so if it's data capture, that sort of thing. So yeah, mobile web we call them web apps, mobile web apps, but they're completely viable solutions and may mean you never get to the App Store, or there's no need for that level of development. You've also got some very basic geo functionality. So you might use a certain site like a mapping like Google Maps or something, and it will pop up and say, do you want to allow access? That'll be sending data from your browser to their systems, and then they can do things clever like show where you are on a map. So on the whole, mobile web, great for marketing, great for informational services, and basically bringing that down to like a concise thing that you can deliver to your customers, and great for prototyping in that context. So we'll jump on now to look at mobile apps and like some of the differences there. I'll try not to get too techy, and then we'll summarise with kind of like mobile marketing and some of the where it's right for you. So I guess the biggest thing now is like if we compare it to mobile web, and I have a habit of repeating myself. If we compare it to mobile web, it's a browser and you're accessing this server every time you load a page request. With an app, it's software that you install onto the phone. So the route for distribution is via an app store. So in the same way at the moment, you probably have a Windows machine or a Mac, and you go to the Mac App Store, or you go to a URL and download stuff from Windows Update and puts it onto your physical desktop. That's what's happening with your phone. So because it's a piece of software, it can access a lot more features that mobile browsers can't. So for security reasons, mobile browser can't access your contacts and your image libraries and stuff like that natively. So instead, with an app, we can do those things on a permission basis. So we've got the app stores. Used to talk in the world of 4, probably talk in the world of 2 at the moment. So you've got Apple, you've got Android, you've got Windows and BlackBerry. I don't know what you've got in your hands at the moment, but I would hazard a guess it's largely Apple or Android. We personally have only been asked to do a few Windows apps, and they've largely been for internal projects, so where a corporate's bought a load of Surface tablets. So it's a global app store. That's the thing to remember. I mean, we've released apps where it's an English language, it's a teaching aid, and the biggest demographic and country that downloaded it was China, and it wasn't even marketed in our world to China. It was for primary school children in the UK. So it's a global platform. With that, each region, each country has its own app store, has its own pricing rules. So you could list an app for sale in the UK for 99p, 69p, and put it in the US for $1.99 or $2.99. And then you've got enterprise distribution. So this is a vehicle that enables you to list an app, but it doesn't get put onto the app stores. What you can do is you can securely download it to a select group of users. So again, when we're talking about enterprise development and internal applications for business processes, so like a pharmaceutical we work with, we put it onto like 100 iPads. That's enterprise distribution. Typical costs, you have to have a renewing annual license with Apple and Android. Android is about $29 a year and Apple's about £59 a year. And if you don't renew your license, then they remove your apps from the App Store, so it's a cost to bear in mind. Mobile web costs, other than obviously the development of the solution, is probably your hosting. A domain and hosting is probably the main thing. With app development, you've got developer licenses, plus in the majority of cases, you may have like a web hosted backend with a database on that uses an API, so you'd have those hosting costs as well. So because of all that, it's software that runs on the device, it generally has much improved in performance, and this is why you can see the level of gaming does exist on the mobile web, but if you look at the quality of gaming and the performance and stuff needed by the native device, enabled by the native device in gaming on mobile, which is like one of the biggest growing sectors, it's because it's a piece of software, not an internet download. Limitations and benefits are you're on multiple platforms. So even though these are global platforms, if you compare the two, it's a limited reach. So, and I'd also argue that there's a subset of users who might not be active app users. So what I mean by that is, so if you release a mobile web version of your solution or your point of access, and it can do everything it needs to do, and it's on a browser with an internet connected device, that can reach far more people than an app that's on Apple only. So typically for the maximum reach, you look at brands who are released on Apple and Android, possibly Windows, but it's still in the infancy. And the second thing is that when it's on those app stores, there's only a subsection of people who are actually active app users. Like, no disrespect to my parents, but they both own Android phones, but I don't think they've ever downloaded an app. So just because you get stats around there's so many apps on the App Store and there's so many devices that are app enabled, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the number of users. And again, we should be targeting sub-segments of our user base. So it's really, I'll come on to the final slide, but it's really about knowing your user, so which platform to go for. And I've got a strategy as well for which one to choose. One of the biggest things that in a small business environment that we've come across that is massively underestimated or probably overlooked when people are looking at apps is push notifications. So this is the ability to send to anybody who's got, there's two aspects to it. One, they enable the push notification, and second is that they download the app in the first place. So it's pure opt-in marketing. If somebody's downloaded your app and they've said yes to push notifications, that's complete permission then on an opt-in basis to send them messages. So the messages can range from informational, so it could be an announcement. I don't know, we work with schools, so it could be something about Johnny's left. We found a bracelet in the playground, all the way through to term dates information. You can have push notifications that drive people into the actual sections in an app and take action. So if it was a gym and they were sending out push notifications about classes, take them to the booking page. At the same time, what the BBC do a lot is send out notifications that have nothing to do with the app. So they'll release breaking news. So it doesn't go anywhere within the app, but it's another piece of information. Push notifications work on loads of levels as well. So you've got the ability to send it to everybody. You've got the ability to schedule it, just like you would with mail campaigns. Think of it like MailChimp in a way. And you've got the ability to segment it based on filters. So it could be like send it to year one parents, but also geo-fencing. So we'll come on to the geo functionality. So the best way to describe it is you can draw on a map the users in that area that you want to send a push notification to, and it's typically on exit or on entry. So in a simple way, if you're a bar in Birmingham and you're sending out an offer about 5 p.m. that you're going to have a cocktail hour, you won't send it to everyone who's got your app because they might be in London or wherever. So you might choose like a 1 kilometre radius around your bar and send it at 4:59, or give them time to walk, and it will just go to those users. The guerrilla tactics I've heard are stuff like, if you had a competitor, you could draw a geo map around your competitor, and every time somebody went into that region, you could send them an offer. the best one I heard was a PT studio. I think it was somewhere like Guildsford or something, but the owner of the gym put geofences over McDonald's and Burger King. So every time somebody with his app walked into those restaurants, it'd say, hey, you need a free PT session or something. So yeah, you can use geo in a really inventive way, more so than with mobile web. So local listings, stuff like that, mapping businesses onto maps are good. I'll scoot along because I'm aware I'm taking time here. So the biggest thing as well is offline use. So because it's piece of software, it doesn't necessarily, depending on the content, need to have an internet connection. So I use one bizarrely for meditation. I have kids, and basically there's no need for that content to be permanently connected to use. So it'll download like 7 meditations, download them from obviously when it's internet connected, and then you use it all entirely offline, so in your car or whatever. So that's a really good, massive benefit. So in some scenarios that we talk to different businesses about, offline is the reason to use an app, and then obviously have a sync process that when the salesperson or whoever gets into a Wi-Fi or a 3G or 4G setting, it'll sync the data. The accelerometer and kind of the whole thing that it's a software piece is like, this is all to do with kind of the fact that it can detect movement. So the compass uses like the accelerometer, and the fact that you can get games where if you tilt the device, it'll, like a driving game, when you tilt it, it acts as a form of data, like user input. The one I've missed off that I can't believe I've missed off is augmented reality, which is probably one of the biggest growth areas. But yeah, the ability to have, it's more on the mobile marketing side of things, but the ability to effectively submerge, a user sat in an office into another environment. And obviously Pokemon Go is probably the biggest augmented reality game at the moment, and you get scenarios where in museums are using it a lot, so you can, it'll detect an object, you point your phone at it, and it might bring that painting to life. It turns in like a Harry Potter museum, really, like you see the paintings move and stuff. So yeah, so it's global. One of the big benefits is you're actually going into a complete ecosystem that's categorized. So whilst it's hugely competitive, there's a huge opportunity to reach audiences. So they're already there, they're already waiting for content. Whereas the URL, it's totally cold, isn't it, really, other than traditional marketing. And then the other thing on the pricing thing, Apple and Android sadly do take a percentage of your sales. So Apple work on a 30% basis of everything you sell, they take. It's probably one of the richest companies in the world, and obviously they provide the platforms. And then Android take less, which wouldn't be a surprise. So you've got in-app purchases, so not only can you have free apps and you can have chargeable downloads, you can also use in-app purchases to give a piece of content away for free, and then as you need more things like meditations or characters or whatever it unlocks, I mean Candy Crush is the classic, then you charge. And the app world moved away about 5 years ago from realising that what people were doing was they were paying 69p for an app and thinking that just means for the lifetime of the app it's always going to work on all future versions. Whereas in-app purchase came along, and it gives the start of a repeat purchasing process for an app. So the potential, King.com, who make Candy Crush, their potential to earn is way beyond the initial download, which is why it's free. And then you get into subscriptions. So there's a lot of models now, especially in the personal development world, where you pay per month or per year, and it brings real recurring revenue to apps. So again, it's intended for software and it's intended for games, but you can start to see some of the differences, hopefully. And it's only intended as a complete, mobile app and mobile web 101. Then we get onto mobile marketing, which is another subsegment of this. So some of the benefits, and this is largely on the app world, but marketing in itself is a huge part of it. So mobile marketing is always on. So whereas with, say, email, it's when you access your inbox. Whereas with your mobile web, largely, you might be in a list and they might take it offline and bring it into email campaigns. But when you access that URL, you're there. That's the only time they can market to you. With apps, with push notifications, we can effectively market to you all the time. There's a fine line between being a nuisance and, there's a whole industry built around now the science of push notifications and how to craft push notifications and when to send them, and all sorts of stuff that's way beyond like this webinar. But the other thing is hyperlocal, so you can create entire ecosystems and environments and communities around locality, that probably more so than in the way that the mobile web works. We've also got mobile payments, so Apple Pay has been out probably 2 years now, and the ability to use your device, and I think Barclaycard have released something as well. So your phone that's always in your pocket and never more than a metre away from you, even at night, is also your wallet. Use it for reservations, boarding passes, those sorts of things. I used one on mine when I flew last, so I didn't need to print off boarding passes, just scan it at the when you're getting on the aircraft. Customer loyalty, so replacing or as an addition to loyalty stamps, you can do QR check-ins and even location-based check-ins, a bit like you've physically been to that place, so you unlock special rewards. And then obviously social media integrations, vouchers as a result of that customer loyalty, and then you've got QR codes which drive it through. So it's only intended as a very simple overview, but I guess the ultimate question is, so which one would be best for you? And I think if you've got a business website and it's not responsive, you're so behind the times, you need to get that sorted straight away. But the reality of, like, if you're building a product or thinking about an idea, whether you should do mobile first or app first, is really, it's all about your user. It doesn't matter which device you own, and we have to do this a lot with CEOs, is ultimately, I know the board sign off decisions, but just because the director has an iPhone doesn't necessarily mean you should build your iPhone application. That sounds rather rude, doesn't it? But that's the truth of it, is who's your user, what functionality do they need to make your solution, a sticky, viable solution for them, and then how do they access it? So if you put all those things together, a lot of the conversations we have don't actually need apps. Like, with the features that people are thinking of and solutions, you can deliver a hell of a lot through mobile web and reach the biggest audience. I think that's what a lot of people overlook, is they get excited about an app store presence and they overlook some of the basic stuff that you could do on the mobile internet. So like I say, it's only an overview of what's possible. It's not intended to be a complete 101 dummies guide, but hopefully that's provided some value and sparked some questions.
Okay, excellent, thank you very much. Your first question is coming through from Stuart, and he says, which platform should I develop for? Okay,
so like as in Windows or Apple, yeah. I mean, obviously the question came in while I was talking, so it goes back to my last point. It's, where's your user base? I think we often find that there's no one clear user base, so it's rare that you're going to have, a clear winner in the fact that, unless it's an internal app. If it's an internal app and you give all your staff iPads, then you build for iPad. A general rule of thumb we've always said is that what you should do is you should look at your, I know it might not be the same solution, look at your demographics, look at Google Analytics will give you a good flavour of who's accessing your web content. Obviously if you're building something completely new, you'll have to go off a different data point, but as a general rule of thumb, if you find out that Apple users are 52%, then start to talk to your customers, just validate that that is true of your sub-segment, and then a general strategy would be, much to popular, I guess it's against popular belief, is rather than release all to everyone at the same time, and build it for one. Even if you're building using a platform where you could release it for all four, build it for one and use it as like a soft launch and iterate and test it amongst those people, so that what you're doing is you're building version 1, you're going to do version iteration 2, 3, 4 to get it right, to get it used, and then roll it out across the board, because otherwise what happens is you have feedback loops coming in from lots of different platforms and you've got lots of different code bases to update, and if you find, dare I say, a bug in a solution like a platform, you've got to roll it out and test it again across all 4. Keep it as simple as it is to scale and to iterate and to test, and then you'll get to the right, ultimately it's about product market fit, isn't it? Delivering the right thing for users. So I hope that answers it. Look at your users, look at who the intended user is, look at what demographic, pick one and iterate until you feel you get to like that launch one.
Okay.
That's the advice.
Perfect, thank you very much. Your next question is from Simon, and he asks, I heard it's very hard to get Apple to accept an app to their store. Any tips?
Yeah, sure. So tips-wise, I think being prepared is the honest thing. So a quick overview of the two main app stores. So if you look at the Android model, and you'll soon work out who likes Google and who likes Apple. So the Google model is it's an open platform pretty much. So there isn't very much opposition to you, like not opposition, checks to you submitting. So typically on an Android on the Play Store, it'll be live in 24 hours and it will only go through an initial code review. So that's why it's so quick. So it's completely automated. So that's pretty easy. I mean, if you get an app rejected from Android, you are really doing something wrong. So you can class Android as no problem. And so compared to that, Apple is a completely different beast. So Apple, as a general rule of thumb, we see it takes 10 to 28 days to get an app reviewed. So what actually happens with Apple is you do the same thing at the same time. You submit your screenshots, submit your descriptions, your app name, and it goes through two passes. So one is an automated check to make sure that the developer has coded it to their standards. So sometimes what's happened in the past is every September they release the next iOS. So you might submit your app in August, it gets reviewed in September and it gets declined because the new Xcode or iOS version wasn't out for you to even build it in, but it get rejected because they only allow it when it meets the latest one. So basically it goes through the automated test, which is are you doing anything nasty, and it goes through the manual test. So somebody actually physically reviews your app. And what they're doing is they're not just saying, okay, you passed all the programming checks. Does it actually have value as an app? And a lot of people don't get rejected on how it was built. They get rejected on its functionality. So Apple have on there, if you go to Google and put in Apple design guidelines, there's a load of functionality in like a bigger document that I can explain that says about how you should design your app and getting it to be appy. So there's certain conventions that web designers would do that Apple would instantly dismiss because they say, if you had like a classic drop-down form, that's not what the world of apps is about. It's not what their design principles are about. So I'm not picking on drop-downs because it's in context, but you could get somebody at Apple who rejects it on that grounds. And so every single check goes through there is like an automated process to it as well, but we had an app where it was doing real estate, but it was in the pub industry. So we submitted app 1 and got approved as like a 3+ rating because it's real estate. And app 2 got accepted, 3+ rating. App 3, identical to the others, got rejected because it was in the pub industry. So the reviewer felt it should be an 18. So all the others are on as 3, but we've got one that's on as an 18. So it just shows how human the process is and its interpretation. So compared to Android, Apple is a minefield. But there are some simple principles. Make it look like an app, make it feel like an app. Don't just put up what a lot of people do, which is don't just take your website content and put it into an app. You won't get it accepted. It needs to be an app, and don't take shortcuts really. Design it properly. And obviously, ultimately, give value to your end user. So yeah, if you're building a viable product for an end user on the Apple platform, you'll have no problems. It's probably the most long-winded answer to a simple question.
No, that was perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Paul, for hosting today's webinar. I will be sending out a copy of the presentation and Paul's contact details out to you all very shortly. But before we close, just a quick reminder, this webinar is part of our service to our Smart Room members. And if you're not already a member or a BizSmart client and would like to access our archive of webinars, then please visit our website, biz-smart.co.uk, and go to the Smart Room page. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day and that you can join us next time. Thank you for listening.